All right, let's jump right in. We're going on a bit of a quest today. We're on the hunt for something pretty incredible. A single, fundamental idea that could be the hidden engine behind all of mathematical logic. Seriously. So, here's the big question, the one that's kept logicians up at night for decades. Think about it. There are so many different ways to prove something is true, right? But what if? What if there was a single, universal master key that can unlock every single one of them? One fundamental principle that just ties it all together? Okay, to really get why that question is such a big deal, we need to take a trip. Welcome to the zoo of proofs. And trust me, it's a wild place.
See, over the years, logicians have come up with this whole menagerie of systems for proving things. You've got resolution, natural deduction, sequent calculus, Hilbert systems. The list just goes on. And they're all super powerful, they all work. But on the surface, they look completely unrelated. It's like a zoo full of totally different species.
And that's the real puzzle, right? We know they all get the job done, but are they really all that different deep down? Or is there some kind of common ancestor, some single unifying idea hiding underneath it all that could explain the whole zoo?
Well, it turns out the answer is a resounding yes. So let's meet the hero of our story, a concept called the replacement proof system. And it's built on a single, super elegant rule that just might be the master key we've been searching for.
So the whole thing boils down to this one simple idea, a replaceable clause. Here's the best way to think about it. Imagine you have a bunch of facts. A replaceable clause is a new statement that is so blindingly obvious given those facts that saying it out loud adds absolutely no new information. It's logically redundant. Its truth was already baked into everything you started with.
Okay, but how do we know if a clause is replaceable? We need a tool for that. And that tool is something called the zeroing assignment. Just think of it as the kryptonite for any logical clause. For any statement you can make, there's one specific combination of inputs that will make it false. That one combo, that's its kryptonite. Its one and only weak spot.
And that brings us to this, the formal test. I know, it looks like a bunch of scary symbols, but don't panic. Stick with me, because this one little line is the entire secret sauce. It's basically a test. It says a new clause, we'll call it M, is replaceable if and only if it passes this test against our original set of facts, which we're calling phi. Let's actually break down what this thing is saying.
Okay, first part. Remember that kryptonite we were just talking about? Well, this first symbol here represents exactly that. It's the kryptonite for our new clause M. It's that one special combo of inputs that makes M false. So what the formula is telling us to do is to imagine we're only looking at situations inside that kryptonite zone. And now for the big verdict. The second part of this test asks a simple question. For every single possible scenario inside that kryptonite zone, do our original facts, our phi, also turn out to be false? Think about what that means. If the only way to make our new statement false puts you in a situation that already contradicts your original facts, well, then that new statement must have been implied all along. It's not adding anything new. It is, by definition, replaceable.
Okay, I get it. That was all pretty abstract, right? So let's make it super concrete. Let's see how this whole replacement idea works in the real world by looking at one of the most common tools in all of logic.
So on the left, you've got a classic rule of logic called resolution. It's simple. If you know A or X is true, and you know B or not X is true, then you can logically conclude that A or B has to be true. Now, the replacement system doesn't argue with that at all. It just gives us a deeper reason why it's true. It says at the conclusion, A or B is nothing more than a replaceable clause that was already hiding in your starting facts.
And we can prove it's a replaceable clause in just 3 easy steps. First, let's find the kryptonite for our conclusion. What's the one and only way for A or B to be false? Well, A has to be false and B has to be false. Step 2. If that's the case, look back at our original facts. You'll see that this scenario creates an impossible contradiction with one of them. It just can't happen. So step 3. That means our conclusion was never really in doubt. It was already implied from the start. It is a perfect, textbook, replaceable clause. And here's the kicker. This isn't just some neat little trick that works for a resolution. This exact same principle, it works for every single animal in our logical zoo. And this is where things get really, really big. This is called the universality theorem, and it is an absolute bombshell. What it formally proves is that any valid, clause-based proof system you can think of, what the pros call sound and complete, can be perfectly simulated step by step by the replacement system. No exceptions, none.
So let's just translate that into plain English. What this theorem means is that every single step in every single valid proof in any system ever designed is secretly just a replacement step. Resolution, natural deduction, all of them, they were all just different ways of applying this one fundamental rule. They were using the master key this whole time and didn't even realize it.
Which brings us back to our zoo. The takeaway here is incredible. Replacement isn't just one more animal in the cage. No, it's the fundamental DNA that every single animal in that zoo is built from. It's the unifying theory we were hoping to find.
Okay, so this is a really beautiful piece of theory, for sure. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter in the real world? What can we do with it?
Well, for starters, it gives us a single unified theory for all proofs, which is huge. It completely simplifies how we think about logic. But maybe even more importantly, it gives computer scientists a brand new foundation to build smarter algorithms. It helps us attack some of the gnarliest problems out there, like the famous SAT problem. And that problem is at the core of everything from figuring out airline schedules to making sure the chip in your phone works correctly. If we understand the fundamental replacement move, we can build way more efficient ways to solve these giant puzzles.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If a universal key this powerful was hiding in plain sight in a field as old as logic, what other master keys, what other universal structures are still out there, just waiting for us to find them in other parts of science?